The first clue that something was about to go wildly off course came when the ceiling light in lecture hall Q17 flickered pink for 3 seconds. It was supposed to mean a minor environmental disturbance, a harmless atmospheric fluctuation, or an uncalibrated thermostat. But to the alien students of the Intergalactic Cultural Cohabitation Academy, any deviation in light color could mean anything from catastrophic hull breach to surprise poetry recital. So when the light pulsed pink, Brelzak dropped his stylus and stared up in alarm. "Is it a drill?" he asked. "No," said Zern, his irides flattening in concern. "I think it's human-related." At the front of the classroom, the door slid open with a wheeze, followed by the unmistakable clatter of a duffel bag being dropped. A tall, tired-looking man in a faded blue hoodie stepped in. His beard was uneven, not in a rugged way, but in a forgot-to-finish shaving kind of way. His face was pale, eyes rimmed with dark circles. "Sorry I'm late," he said, panting as he pulled a chair backward with a screech and dropped into it. "Had to stop by the Mebe." "Again?" Brelzak leaned toward Zern. "That one. The human. He's always injured." "I heard he tried to eat a metal nut thinking it was candy," Zern replied. The human removed a plastic case from his bag, popped it open, and downed 5 colorful capsules, chasing them with a swig from a battered metal thermos. Brelzak's tendrils twitched visibly. "Is he poisoning himself?" Professor Teln, a crystalline entity shaped like a sideways harp, paused her lecture on multi-species ethics and turned toward the human. "Mr. Ferin Radley," her voice chimed, "are you consuming dangerous substances in my classroom again?" "They're just basic supplements," Ferin said, shrugging and pocketing the case. "Supplements?" Brelzak muttered aloud, unable to hold back any longer. "To what? Your skeletal integrity? Your sanity?" Ferin turned his head, slightly amused. "Vitamins. You know, daily essentials. Vitamin C, D, iron, magnesium. The usual." The alien student stared. Zern blinked slowly. "You mean you ingest isolated chemical compounds on purpose?" "Well, yeah," Ferin said. "Mostly to keep my immune system from collapsing under the weight of this academy's recycled air." Professor Teln floated a few inches higher, her tones neutral. "Are these supplements approved by intergalactic health compliance?" "Oh, none of that stuff works on me anyway," Ferin said, leaning back. "Human biology is a bit of a mess. We patch it up as we go." There was silence for a long moment. Then Brelzak slowly raised a hand. "Yes, Brelzak?" the professor asked. "I would like to file a request for a biological translator." "I do not understand how he is still alive." The lecture resumed, but the tension didn't fade. After class, Ferin was cornered near the hydration station by a group of curious alien students. Zern, Brelzak, and a third student named Trelt, who resembled a stack of wet towels with eyes, stood around him in a loose semicircle. "What are the pink ones for?" Trelt asked, his voice bubbling. "Those are for joint pain and inflammation," Ferin replied. "Keeps my knees from locking up after I fell down that maintenance shaft last week." "You fell 2 stories," Zern said. "And refused surgery." "I didn't refuse," Ferin said. "I just didn't have time to wait 6 hours in line. Finals week." "You humans are reckless," Brelzak said quietly. "We would be quarantined and sent back home for less." Ferin popped another pill in his mouth and shrugged. "You get used to it." Later that week, Ferin's situation escalated. Professor Teln had invited a guest lecturer, Dr. Varnil, a long-standing expert on interspecies medical anthropology. A towering creature with translucent skin showing the flow of blue luminescent fluids within, he had never interacted directly with a human before. He began his lecture with enthusiasm. "Today we will discuss adaptive physiology," he said, gesturing to a floating display of various species organs. Each species maintains balance through internal regulation. For instance, the Garlictians synthesize their own nutrients. Ferin sneezed violently. Every head turned. Zern flinched. Trelt recoiled so hard he hit the wall. Dr. Varnell's glow dimmed. "Is that part of your regulatory process?" "Sorry," Ferin sniffed. "Allergic to something in here. Might be the polixi spores." "You're allergic to atmospheric particles?" "Yeah, a lot of humans are. That's why I carry antihistamines." He reached into his bag and pulled out a different capsule case. Dr. Varnell stepped forward cautiously. "May I examine those?" Ferin hesitated but handed him the case. The alien opened it carefully and scanned the contents. You take these daily? Only when I feel my sinuses trying to murder me, Ferin said. Dr. Varnil turned to the class. Observe, students. This human's biology is so unstable that he must manually correct it multiple times a day using chemical ingestion. This would be considered a critical flaw in most species. It's not unstable, Ferin said. It's just high maintenance. The next day, Ferin was pulled aside by administration. He entered the small, dimly lit office of Director Larn, a being composed entirely of vibrating nanospheres. Larn pulsated in shades of violet as Ferin sat across from him. We've received multiple reports from faculty and students regarding your pill consumption, Larn said. There is concern. They're vitamins, Ferin repeated. Just basic supplements. Your definition of basic implies a regularity that does not match the intensity of your regimen. Ferin leaned forward. Look, I'm not trying to be difficult, but human bodies break down. We can't photosynthesize. We don't regenerate. We need external support. Larn buzzed thoughtfully. Do you believe your continued reliance on these substances will lead to further complications? Ferin hesitated. I fell off a mezzanine 2 months ago. Broke my arm. I took calcium and vitamin D to speed healing. Still took 6 weeks. You did not seek dermal regeneration? I did. The machine couldn't sync with my bone density. It tried to fuse the wrong area. Larn vibrated in alarm. You were nearly fused incorrectly? Yeah. It happens. That night, Ferin sat in the academy mess hall alone, swirling a spoon in a bowl of synthetic soup. Zern approached quietly and sat beside him. I asked the kitchen to stop using polixi spores, Zern said. Ferin smiled weakly. Thanks. You confuse us, Zern said. You fix yourself with chemicals. You survive injuries that would kill others. But you suffer constantly. Welcome to being human, Ferin said. Our bodies are stubborn, but we don't give up on them. Zern nodded slowly. Perhaps you are not defective. Merely complicated. Same thing really, Ferin said. But hey, I've got a new batch of vitamins arriving tomorrow. Want to see the labels? Zern hesitated, then nodded. Ferin grinned. You might like the ones shaped like bears. 3 days after the guest lecture incident, Ferin's left eye swelled shut. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't pulse or glow or weep electric fluid like Zern's species did under stress. It just puffed up, slowly, methodically, like it had considered the situation, weighed its options, and decided that vision was no longer a priority. He noticed it halfway through his xenolinguistics lab, when the text on his screen began to tilt. Professor, he said, raising a hand halfway before lowering it again. I think my eyes staging a mutiny. The instructor, a floating hexagonal drone named Creech, rotated toward him. Is this a proverb? Nope. Just rapidly losing depth perception. Creech processed this with a brief stutter of blue light. You are permitted to depart. Please avoid contaminating the interface ports. Ferin nodded once, grabbed his bag, and bumped into a chair on the way out. Outside the lab, the corridor was unusually quiet. Afternoon classes were in session and the cleaning drones were still patrolling the upper ventilation zones. Ferin leaned against the wall and dug through his bag one-handed, pulling out a soft gel ice pack, a mirror shard, and a small zippered pouch labeled critical maybe. He peeled back the pouch flap and surveyed his options, 3 kinds of antihistamines, an eye lubricant, and a topical anti-inflammatory gel that he wasn't entirely sure was meant for ocular use. He decided on the gel anyway. It was either that or find a med tech with enough patience to decode the human ocular nerve system, which had proven unpopular after the surprise pupil dilation incident last semester. He applied the gel, blinked slowly, and grimaced. Ferin Radley, came a voice from behind him. He turned carefully and saw Brelzak and Trelt standing just outside the lecture hall. Brelzak's dermal plates had shifted slightly, a sign of mild distress. Trelt was holding what looked like a wrapped food item with both appendages. You are leaking again, Brelzak observed. From the top eye area. Just a bit of inflammation. Probably spores again. Or stress. Or maybe I scratched it in my sleep. Trelt extended the food item. I brought you a nutrient square. It contains no airborne irritants. Ferin accepted it gratefully. Thanks. What's the filling? Unclear. He took a bite anyway. It tasted like compressed oatmeal with a hint of something vaguely citrus. I have questions, Brelzak said. Again. I figured. You have backups for your own organs? Ferin blinked with his good eye. Backups. You carry replacements. External regulators. Patches. Your pouch contains what amounts to portable organ assistance. Ferin looked down at his bag. I guess that's one way of putting it. Trelt inched closer. We do not do that. Our bodies are self-regulating. Yeah, well, ours try. But sometimes they get distracted. Brelzak tilted his head. By what? Gravity, viruses, stress, sun exposure, dairy products, air travel. You name it. Trelt's eyes widened. Your biology is distractible? In a manner of speaking. Fascinating, Brelzak muttered. They were interrupted by a series of rapid chimes echoing through the hall. It was the emergency alert tone, but played at half volume. A low-grade situation, probably structural maintenance or a minor containment breach. But Ferin tensed anyway. A few seconds later, a security orb zipped past overhead, trailing a faint scent of ozone. Brelzak glanced after it. We should return to class. I'll head to the infirmary, Ferin said. Just in case this turns into another exposure event. Trell reached into his satchel and pressed a small, chilled vial into Ferin's hand. Use this if your eye begins to emit fluid. Thanks. I'll try not to reach that stage. They parted ways and Ferin made his way down the corridor toward the medical wing. As he walked, he passed two maintenance drones huddled near a wall panel, chirping anxiously in binary. One of them sparked. Ferin gave them a thumbs up and kept moving. By the time he reached the infirmary, the swelling had settled into an angry pink crescent. The light in the corridor flickered twice before stabilizing. He stepped through the auto door and was met by a thin, insectal medic named Krell who wore a mask despite not having a respiratory system. I require a sample of your ocular discharge, Krell said flatly. I'm not sure I'm producing any. Then please sit. I will attempt visual calibration. Ferin climbed onto the diagnostic bed, which adjusted itself to an awkward incline. Krell extended a scanning device shaped like a broccoli stalk and held it near Ferin's eye. The device emitted a melodic hum, then a burst of static. Krell tapped it twice. Human eyes are uncooperative. Tell me about it. Do you experience vision distortion? Hallucinations? Pulsing shadows? No. Just blurry text and mild pulsation when I bend forward. Krell chirped once and handed him a small rectangle. Place this beneath your tongue. Ferin complied. Tasted like mint and battery acid. You are not infected, Krell concluded. But you are exhibiting a pattern of chronic inflammation. This is your third visit this rotation. Fourth, I just didn't sign in the last time. Krell tilted their head. Why not? I didn't want to be flagged for excessive fragility. The medic thought about this. That is a valid concern. But if your cellular resilience is declining, suppression will not help. I know. I just don't want to be kicked out of the program for having a defective immune system. You are not defective. You are statistically anomalous. Ferin chuckled. That's a generous way of putting it. You will rest, Krell instructed. And hydrate. I will forward you a dietary printout with recommended anti-inflammatory compounds. I already have a list. This one is tailored for your enzyme profile and will not conflict with your current supplements. Ferin raised an eyebrow. You analyzed my supplements? I accessed your vitamin database. Some of your selections are redundant. Others are creatively labeled. Creative how? Mood Stability Complex does not contain any stabilizing agents. Ferin sighed. I knew that one was a scam. Krell handed him a sealed packet of drops. Apply these twice daily. And reduce stress intake. I'll try not to inhale any more exams. As he left the infirmary, the corridor lights shifted to a cool green normal environmental status. He passed the same maintenance drones, now disassembling a ceiling panel with what appeared to be a spoon. Back in his dorm pod, Ferin collapsed into the recliner and opened his message queue. A new thread blinked at the top, Special Assembly. Human Resilience Analysis Attendance Mandatory. He groaned. Half an hour later, he stood at the back of the observation dome with a group of confused-looking aliens and two faculty drones. Brelzak and Zern stood near the front, whispering. A tall, moth-like ambassador named Sher7 took the stage. We are gathered to discuss the recent increase in human medical incidents and their implications for interspecies cohabitation. Mr. Radley has agreed to provide context. Ferin blinked. I have. Apparently he had. He stepped forward, rubbing his eye. All right, let's talk about grit, poor decisions, and multivitamins. There was a pause. Then he added, I can't promise answers, but I've got stories. And the room listened. The lights in the assembly dome dimmed just enough to emphasize how little Ferin wanted to be there. He stood on the low platform with nothing but a bottle of water, a stool that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never sat down, and the expectant gazes of over 70 students, only 3 of whom were human. The rest represented at least 24 species, some wearing filtration masks, others coiled or slouched in shapes better suited to lower gravity. Several had brought translation nodes which blinked and ticked as they processed Ferin's vocal patterns. One blinked rapidly whenever he took a breath, which was beginning to feel like a personal insult. The student moderator, an orb with a single antenna, floated beside him. You may begin, it said, and promptly drifted toward the far wall. Ferin cleared his throat. Right? So, I guess this is what happens when you take too many vitamins on a space campus. No reaction. Not even a ripple of confusion. Just blinking. He took a sip of water and tried again. Okay, let's be real. I didn't know I'd be the first human in this part of the galaxy to give a health talk. But here we are. So let's start simple. I take supplements because otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here. Not because I'm fragile. Because I'm trying to keep up. A long-limbed student in the second row raised something that looked like a wing. You are not structurally compromised? No, Ferin said. I'm just built for conditions that don't exist here. Different sunlight, different gravity, different microbes. My body still thinks I'm back home, dealing with Earth's problems. Another hand tentacle appendage rose from the upper tier. What is Earth's gravity? About 9.8 meters per second squared, Ferin said. Here, it's lighter. Which sounds great until your bones start wondering why they're bothering. Murmurs passed through the crowd, translated and retranslated, until a Pilthian student spoke up. Are you saying you are actively resisting environmental integration? No, I'm adapting in slow motion. That's different. He reached into his bag and pulled out 3 labeled capsules, holding them up. These aren't cure-alls. They're more like nudges. This one helps me absorb calcium. This one keeps my stomach from turning into a war zone. This one tells my blood to stop trying to clot when I'm just sitting still. The room was silent again. Then a student with a bioluminescent neck frill stood. If your internal systems require so many corrections, how did your species reach space? By inventing ways to survive things we weren't built for, Ferin said. Including our own biology. A few heads turned as a door at the far end opened. Krell entered, wearing a wrap that shimmered faintly with sterilization coating. She didn't speak, just took a seat near the back. Ferin gave her a quick nod. Someone else raised a voice, soft, layered, like 2 people speaking in harmony. What happens if you stop taking them? Ferin hesitated. I get headaches. I can't sleep. My joints swell. I get dizzy if I stand up too fast. My eyesight fuzzes out and sometimes I get chest pain. A pause. Then why are you still here? He let out a breath. Because the alternative is giving up. That answer seemed to land differently. A few translation notes chimed in response, colors shifting as comprehension spread. I'm not saying it's fun, Ferin continued. I'm saying it works. Barely. But it works. The moderator orb floated back to his side. You have exceeded your time allotment. I'm almost done. He looked around the room, scanning the rows of eyes, lenses, and sensory pits. Every species here has some magic organ that solves half your problems. Humans don't. We've got hands, stubbornness, and the ability to stay alive by sheer force of will. That's why I take supplements. Not because I'm weak. Because I'm not giving up. The orb blinked green. Presentation concluded. The lights returned to full brightness. A few students stood. Others remained seated, processing. No one clapped. It wasn't that kind of event, but no one laughed, either. Afterward, Ferin stepped off the platform and made a beeline for the nearest hydration station. He filled a cup with something clear and vaguely citrus and leaned against the wall. Zern approached from the side, holding a datapad. You were not as incoherent as I expected, he said. High praise. You implied humans use pharmacological compensation as a primary adaptive trait. Pretty much. Zern tapped his pad. That aligns with the data Krell shared. Your species compensates for biological insufficiencies with external substances and behavioral stubbornness. You make it sound like a gambling strategy. For you, perhaps it is. Ferin chuckled. Well, the house always wins. But I keep playing. Brelzak appeared next, carrying a container of rehydration gel. Do you require electrolytes? He asked. Ferin waved him off. I'm good. Just need to sit for a bit. You are not sitting. I'm working up to it. Trelt joined them late, trailing a faint scent of overcooked starch and carrying something wrapped in thermal cloth. He handed it to Ferin without comment. Inside was a mildly warm protein slab with unfamiliar seasoning. Is this edible? For most known species, Trelt said. May cause mild euphoria in mammals. Ferin took a bite. It tasted like toasted rice and burnt cinnamon. His left eye twitched. I think it's working. They stood together in silence for a while, watching the last few students disperse. Eventually, Zern spoke again. We have decided not to request your removal. That's generous of you. You are a liability, Brelzak added, but you are also instructive. We have updated our curriculum to include human compensatory strategies. Sounds like a fascinating elective. It is mandatory, Zern said. Ferin sighed and sat down on the bench. I'm just glad I don't have to give another speech. I'm running out of body parts to explain. Vrel passed by, pausing only to hand him a small patch. Apply this to your upper back. It will regulate your cortisol levels for the rest of the cycle. Ferin looked at it. Does it sting? Yes. Sounds familiar. She left without further comment. As the assembly dome emptied and the lights shifted to ambient blue, Ferin leaned back and exhaled slowly. Maybe I'm not built for this place, he said aloud. But neither were any of you. You just got better instructions. No, Zern said. We had fewer reasons to try harder. The bench creaked as Brelzak sat beside him, gingerly like the metal might complain. Your species is confusing, he said. But perhaps not defective. Ferin smiled without looking up. I'll take that as a compliment. It was not intended as one. I'll take it anyway. Trelt offered him another wrapped item, which Ferin declined with a wave. I'm full. And mildly euphoric. They sat in companionable silence as the cleaning drones began their slow sweep of the floor. And for the first time in weeks, Ferin didn't feel like he was just surviving. He felt like he belonged, patches, pills, and all.